Hey, welcome back to the podcast. I'm Leah.
I'm Riley.
I'm Jake.
I'm Brennan.
And I'm Zofia.
And today we're going to be continuing our discussion on cults. And last time, if you remember, our question was how exactly are cults dangerous? And we covered the topics of dangerous cult leaders and then abuse that goes on in cults. This episode, we're going to be talking about the dangers of terrorism in cults, along with the danger that cults pose to other religions. So to start off, I have a testimony. So there is this man named Carey Noble who entered a church for gay men in Kansas City, and in 1984 with the intentions of blowing it up. But as Noble sat among the crowd, he put a face to his enemy. He thought of the consequences of what would have amounted to the largest terrorist attack in America at the time. Then he picked the briefcase up and left. That is from Cults of Hatred, which is an Monitor on Psychology, which is an American Psychological Association. So this is an example of a member of a cult. Carey Noble was specifically a member of the cult called the Covenant Sword and Arm of the Lord, CSA for short. And this cult was intent on harming and killing homosexuals, people of color, and Jews. So this attack would be classified as a terrorist attack. But because Carey Noble was also a part of a cult, it kind of is an example of how dangerous cults can be. You know what I mean? Especially if they're what Monitor on Psychology says is a cult of hatred, which that means that the cult is aggressive to a people group of some sort and targets that in order to harm that people group. And typically those cults, I think, would have terrorist tendencies, per se. I don't know, what do you guys think about cults and terrorism?
Well, what was the name of the one that filled the subway with sarin gas?
That was a Japanese cult. I forgot the exact name, but it's pretty infamous in Japan.
Yes, that one. That one was really bad, and it was like they got so many people, and they killed so many people and injured so many people on that one. It was a really big attack on others from this cult.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that the cults are like terrorist organizations, but they have like influence of like psychopaths and like crazy people who join their cult. So it's more of their influence. They're not exactly like terrorist groups. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because there's like a difference between terrorist groups and then people who are fighting for like a cause, kind of.
Yeah.
And so it's like for them, for cults, it's a cause, and for terrorist groups, they do it just because they're told to, because it's a mission.
Yeah, there is a specific. I'm trying to find it.
Yeah.
In the meantime, do you guys have any other thoughts?
There's certain cults that like will have a hit list of people. Like there's one from the Middle East that like has a hit list of people, and they would go bombing because they had a hit list of people that have crossed them in the past. So they continue growing that hit list.
What about you, Zofia?
Well, I feel like I don't know if it was Riley or what Jake said, but terrorist groups, the whole reason they do terrorist attacks is to have a message. Like cults don't have they're not spreading a message when they kill people.
Yeah.
I mean, they could be.
But
it's not like that at all.
No.
Like the Manson murders,
yeah.
they were children and
yeah.
they just killed because they were brainwashed.
Yeah.
And he like said like pain is how you learn. I don't know, but he said something. He had like there was this quote that he said. I have to find it, but
Yeah. So Step Together, which is a government agency for New Southern Wales. I don't know what country that's in. And it says, a cult can be described as a small group of people who have extreme religious beliefs. Violent extremist groups are likewise committed to all-encompassing, rigid, overvalued beliefs. So that's something that they have something that they have in common is this like dedication to this set doctrine, right? That's like the whole the purpose of their cult, and may even be the motivation on why they go out and attack just normal civilians.
And I think like when I read the definition of terrorism, which is the unlawful use of violence and intimidation, especially against civilians in the pursuit of political aim, it kind of reminds me of how like cults always like use like techniques to recruit their people, and then like they actually use that to actually manipulate them to do stuff for them, you know? Yeah. And how it can be used, that manipulation power can be used in ways that's detrimental to both people's lives and society. And also, if someone tries to leave the cult, it's like they're gonna have to live with the fact that they did that act, but if they're no longer gonna get protected anymore from their previous actions. So they'll be facing some time.
Well, I found the quote by Charles Manson. It's "Death is the greatest form of love" from Goodreads. So like, so I don't really think cults have a message. I think the reason they kill is because of their leader and because of how their leader is a big influence on them and how he can brainwash people. Like, just looking at these quotes, like,
It's not good.
he's a crazy man. But yeah, now let's move on to the next topic of how cults pose a threat to religions, like specifically Christianity.
So I want to like open this up by addressing the fact that many cults are trying to pass off as new age religious groups now. That there is a very fine line between religion, what's considered religion and what's considered a cult. Because if you consider like Mormonism or Scientology, those are cults, but they're considered established religions just because of their size. So perhaps if like a cult grows to such like a big size, it'll actually be considered an established religion.
Well, maybe because they haven't necessarily caused harm to anyone that we know of.
There's a thing about
Scientology has been found to cause harm.
But Mormonism, there's something that always gets me about Mormonism is the fact that they do preach messages about like about their version of the gospel, right? Well, I feel like those who preach or have things to say about God and like their versions of it kind of like set a bad example for Christianity and puts it in a bad light.
Yeah.
And that's why like Christianity gets such a bad rap because of it, because of detrimental impact from that.
Because cults of Christianity just it's funny how many cults are established on the Bible. Like there's a lot of cults. Like Heaven's Gate means Heaven's Gate's main scripture or main text was the Bible.
Wasn't Jonestown a Christian one?
Yeah, it started.
He was a pastor, a Christian pastor,
and then it just grew into something else. So it's like
I think he got fired or removed from the church.
Well, it's obvious why he got fired.
Yeah, and so he took like a group of people with him, like a very diverse group with him,
and made him kill them all cells with Kool-Aid.
Yeah. Well, I think that's only when people start paying attention to cults is when
when there's mass murder or there's been significant characters of violence, especially like leaders of certain places, they get murdered and they trail it back to the cult.
Because people usually don't stop it until it's too late.
Yeah, and honestly, like sometimes cults get away with it because what are you gonna do to them? It's like basically the religion.
Okay. Jake, Brennan, do you have any thoughts on
Yeah, I was gonna say that I think that the doctrine from these cults are definitely the most like opposing threat to like the United States and like churches, because like Leah was saying, they grow into like full-grown religions, and I would say that like there's not enough terrorism cases to like they've been a reoccurring for a while now, for many decades, but like I wouldn't say that's the biggest threat that cults have to give. I'd say it's their crazy doctrine that could indoctrinate.
Mm-hmm.
For religion, they're going to have a relationship with a god. They're going to have a purpose for an afterlife or something like that. Where a cult, they're worshiping their cult leader, and that can bring dangers within that. There's a lot different from.
Because sometimes cult leaders refer to themselves as gods.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like
That's
with
why
the-
their members worship
with
the
the
leader.
power of persuasion, it's so easy to for people to get swept off their feet with their basically baloney and
Yeah.
stuff. I can't say about it.
I don't think they worship their leaders because they think they're God. I think it's just because they make so many promises that end up coming back empty.
No, I don't think they think they're God. I think they look at them as a god almost. Like
Some do think they're God.
I don't know about that. I know though that there's certain cults like that Middle Eastern cult I was talking about. They looked as their leader as almost like a god, and they worshipped him. They did whatever he said as soon as he said it. They were obeying him instead of a true god.
Yeah, without question or without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah, this is
This
so.
is heavy.
Yeah, so one thing I wanted to ask is why exactly this is important. Why should we be researching cults in the first place? I think this ties in with the religion piece, is especially if you're a Christian, you have to know what's real and what's not. You have to know what's true and what's false, because there's a lot of different people preaching many different messages, and most of them, or if not all the other ones, will not give you what you need. There'll be empty promises, is basically what I'm trying to say. And hold on, I just lost it. Hold on, you remember.
Well, me just say what I.
Yeah, say
while
what
you're
you
saying
think
that.
while I'm trying.
For me, it's like the reason why this is important is because we need to understand like what to look for when we are like if we're like going to somewhere new for like a church or something. We need to be cautious, and actually this is beneficial to help us understand what to look for in the signs that we see, to make sure it's not a cult, but also the fact that we can also, on the other side of it, we can also understand and realize there's a second piece of it where we can realize that cults and religion and like how that it all works and what really goes on in it sometimes. And then also like what the scripture has to say about it, and then what they say about it, and it's just like
Trying to find the
trying
truth
to find the truth, like the straight path.
What are you typing? I can hear your keyboard clacking.
Sorry. Trying to fix the schedule thing. Go ahead.
But yeah, this is something that I think all Christians should actually use and actually be aware of, because then I'm pretty sure things would be at least a little bit better, and there would be a lot less skepticism of Christianity.
Yeah.
And like doubt.
Any other final thoughts before we close?
I agree with that. I would also like to add that I think researching cults and gaining more knowledge on them helps to prevent the start of a cult, like creating cults. you know, a lot of kids who grow as adults, like, they can enter into cults, or they can enter into cults as like children. We don't know, or they can even start a cult. If we don't educate people on this kind of stuff, then like nothing's going to change.
There was
Any closing thoughts from you guys? No?
one that, I mean, I do have a question, but I'll ask you that later.
Okay. Well, this
This has been fun. This has
yeah,
been quite an adventure with you guys.
I guess. Well, that's the end.
Signing
Hope
off,
you
this
enjoyed
is
our
Riley.
conversation. Goodbye.